Chapter 54 A New Challenge. Adrian, Serena, Kale, and Leora had learned to expect the unexpected during their travels, but the arrival at the Isle of Echoes introduced a challenge that defied all their previous experiences. The island, barely visible through a thick, unyielding mist, seemed to hum with an eerie energy that sent a shiver down their spines. Legends spoke of its strange ability to twist reality, where time and space blurred, and even the most steadfast of minds could falter. As they approached the island's fog-covered shores, an uneasy tension hung in the air, the mist thickening around them as though the island itself was drawing them into its mysterious depths. It was a place not just of physical peril but of psychological strain, where the landscape shifted unpredictably, and the mind's deepest fears and desires could come to life. The island's foreboding reputation had not been overstated, and the moment they set foot on its damp earth, the sense of disorientation was palpable. Every step felt uncertain, as if the ground itself could betray them. The whispers of the island, carried on the wind, seemed to echo their thoughts and fears, amplifying them in unnerving ways. Each member of the group was tested not only by the physical dangers that lay ahead but by the intangible, twisting challenges that sought to unravel their confidence and unity. It was a place where the mind could become as much a danger as the environment itself, where the trials would demand more than just strength or skill. It would require them to confront their own doubts, weaknesses, and the very essence of their beliefs. As the Elysium sailed closer to the Isle of Echoes, a thick fog began to roll over the sea, swallowing the horizon and casting an eerie pall over the waters. The once clear view was quickly obscured, the familiar blue sky blurring into a dense, oppressive gray. The fog was unlike anything the crew had encountered before. It felt alive, moving with a strange purpose, curling around the ship like a veil that refused to be pierced. The usual sounds of the sea seemed muffled, replaced by a thick silence that deepened the tension in the air. Even the most seasoned sailors, accustomed to the unpredictable nature of the ocean, felt a subtle unease settle over them. It was as though the island itself was waiting, watching, preparing for their arrival. There was no denying the weight of the atmosphere. Something about this place felt different, far more ominous than any of the dangers they had faced before. When the ship finally anchored near the shore, the fog seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if responding to their presence. The air was thick and still, vibrating with an otherworldly hum that resonated deep in their bones. The crew stood at the edges of the ship, their gazes fixed on the mist-shrouded land, a sense of foreboding growing with each passing moment. The island, barely visible through the swirling fog, seemed to loom larger than life, its jagged cliffs and shadowed forests hidden beneath an impenetrable shroud. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that this was not an ordinary place. It was a threshold, a gateway to something far beyond the ordinary scope of their adventures. The island had a presence, and the crew could feel it, as though it was calling them forward, challenging them to face whatever trials lay hidden within its depths. Adrian, Serena, Kale, and Leora disembarked from the Elysium, their feet sinking into the soft, damp earth as the thick fog pressed in around them. The air was cool and heavy, wrapping around them like a blanket. The island's rugged terrain stretched out before them, marked by towering cliffs that seemed to rise from the earth with jagged, imposing forms, and deep ravines that split the land like open wounds. As they moved further inland, the fog grew denser, swirling and shifting as if alive, making it difficult to see even a few feet ahead. Each step forward felt uncertain, as though the very landscape was constantly changing around them. Their senses were heightened, but the dense fog dulled their vision, forcing them to rely on their other instincts to guide them. The only sounds breaking the eerie silence were the soft crunch of their footsteps on the uneven ground and the distant, haunting calls of creatures hidden within the mist. The calls seemed to echo and reverberate through the air, giving the impression that they were surrounded by unseen forces, watching their every move. The fog seemed to absorb any other noise, creating an unnatural quiet that made the group feel both isolated and vulnerable. With every step, the feeling that they were intruding on a place that was not meant to be discovered grew stronger. Despite their growing unease, they pressed forward, knowing that the island held secrets that could change the course of their journey. But the deeper they ventured, the more they realized that the Isle of Echoes was no ordinary place. It was a realm where the very fabric of reality seemed to bend and twist around them. Their first challenge appeared before them in the form of an ancient, crumbling archway that loomed ominously in the mist. The stone structure was weathered by time, its once majestic carvings now faded and worn, but still visible in the dim light. Intricate symbols adorned every surface, winding around the arch in a pattern that seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. The atmosphere around the archway seemed charged, as if it were guarding a secret just beyond its threshold. Adrian, Serena, and Leora studied it from different angles, the weight of the challenge settling in as they tried to decipher its meaning. It was clear that this was no ordinary obstacle. It was a test of sorts, designed to measure more than just their strength. Kale, his eyes gleaming with excitement, stepped forward to inspect the symbols. His fingers brushed over the weathered stone, tracing the intricate designs with a scholarly precision. After a long moment of contemplation, he looked up, his expression filled with determination. "This is a puzzle," he declared, his voice steady but full of anticipation. "It's not meant to be solved by force but by our collective intellect and teamwork. These symbols are a language, a riddle that we must decode together." His words hung in the air, and the group exchanged looks of understanding. This would not be a straightforward challenge. The archway was a puzzle that required their combined knowledge, insights, and cooperation to unlock the path forward. Together, they would have to interpret the symbols and find the solution hidden within the ancient design. The archway, though magnificent in its age, was more than just a stone structure. It was a labyrinth of interconnected riddles and mechanisms, each more intricate than the last. The symbols that adorned the arch were only the beginning. Surrounding it were hidden gears, levers, and switches that seemed to shift and respond to the energy around them. Kale's keen eye for ancient puzzles proved indispensable as he carefully examined the symbols, cross-referencing them with old texts he had studied over the years. Yet, the complexity of the design was such that it quickly became clear that this was not a puzzle that could be solved by one mind alone. The very nature of the challenge required their combined skills and knowledge. Serena's connection to the magical energies of the island gave her an edge in sensing the faint pulses of power that emanated from the archway. As Kale deciphered the symbols, she focused her energy, trying to attune herself to the subtle shifts in the air around them. She could feel when a particular mechanism resonated with the correct magical frequency. Meanwhile, Adrian and Leora worked tirelessly with the physical components of the puzzle, turning gears, pressing hidden buttons, and aligning levers, while keeping a careful eye on the results of their actions. The process was long and exhausting, frustration mounting as they encountered false starts and misalignments, but they never faltered. Hours passed, their concentration unwavering, until finally, with a soft click and a low rumble, the archway unlocked, its passage now open to them. The sense of accomplishment was palpable, but it was tempered by the understanding that the trials of the Isle of Echoes were far from over. Beyond the archway, the landscape morphed into something entirely different, and the true nature of the maze revealed itself. The air grew thick, heavy with an unsettling tension, and the path ahead seemed to shift with every step they took. The maze was not just a physical challenge, it was a mental and emotional trial that preyed upon their deepest fears and vulnerabilities. As Serena stepped forward, her surroundings flickered and distorted, giving way to the image of the reef in turmoil. The calm waters she had once known were now turbulent and chaotic, the delicate balance she had sworn to protect unraveling before her eyes. The cries of the creatures she had cared for echoed through the air, and the weight of failure pressed on her heart. The illusion was so vivid that it took every ounce of her focus to remind herself it was not real, yet the fear it stirred within her felt all too tangible. Adrian, too, found himself ensnared by the maze's power, his mind plagued by vivid visions of his past mistakes and failures. He saw the faces of those he had let down, the opportunities he had squandered, and the lives that had been altered by his previous choices. The haunting images of guilt and regret threatened to drown him, but his resolve to push forward kept him moving. Kale was faced with illusions of his own, doubts about his intellect, his worth as a scholar, and whether his pursuits of knowledge were truly meaningful. Leora, the ever-compassionate healer, confronted her fear of inadequacy, questioning if she could truly protect those she cared about. Each of them struggled to push past their personal demons, yet it was the strength they drew from one another that ultimately kept them on course. Together, they fought against the illusions, understanding that the true challenge was not the maze itself, but overcoming the insecurities that had been brought to the surface. The illusions of the maze tested each member of the group in ways they hadn't anticipated. For Serena, the vision of losing her connection to the reef was the most devastating. The sight of the once vibrant underwater sanctuary decaying and sinking into chaos stirred a deep, primal fear within her. The reef had been her home, her purpose, and the thought of being severed from it, of failing to protect it, made her question everything she had fought for. The illusion felt so real that it nearly overwhelmed her, and the weight of the loss threatened to break her spirit. Adrian, too, found himself grappling with his own doubts. His mind was flooded with images of past decisions, moments when he had felt unworthy, when his actions had harmed others, or when his dreams had seemed out of reach. His insecurities about his worthiness to be a leader and partner resurfaced, amplifying his fear that he had never truly earned the trust and respect he had now. The mental and emotional toll of the maze became a battleground, testing not only their resolve but also the strength of their unity. As each member of the group fought against the illusions, their struggles began to create a rift. Serena and Adrian, though always strong together, found themselves retreating inwardly, each consumed by their own personal battles. The once seamless bond they shared was momentarily fractured as the weight of their fears and insecurities began to pull them apart. Kale, though analytical, struggled to guide them through the maze without succumbing to his own feelings of inadequacy. Leora, usually the grounding presence in the group, found herself questioning whether she could truly heal and protect her companions. The strain was palpable, and for a brief, haunting moment, it seemed as though their alliance might shatter under the pressure of their own inner demons. But it was in that moment of doubt that their bond proved its strength. Through shared vulnerability and a quiet understanding, they found the resolve to push forward together. As they made their way deeper into the maze, the strain of the illusions and their internal struggles began to crack the fragile veneer of unity that had held them together. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with frustration. Serena's voice broke through the silence, sharp and accusing. "You're being reckless, Adrian! You're charging forward without thinking of the consequences." Her words, born from the fear of losing the reef and her connection to it, lashed out with the force of a wave. Adrian's face flushed with frustration, his own fears fueling the fire. "You think I don't know what's at stake? I'm doing what needs to be done." His voice was tight with anger, the weight of his insecurities turning every criticism into a personal affront. The accusation stung more deeply than he wanted to admit, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Serena saw him as nothing more than a flawed leader, incapable of guiding them through the trials. Their words, like daggers, cut through the already fragile atmosphere, and the rift between them widened, making it harder to see the path ahead. Kale and Leora, already battling their own demons, found themselves caught in the fallout of their friends' escalating conflict. Kale, whose intellect had always been his greatest strength, now found himself questioning whether his knowledge was enough to keep them from falling apart. He had always relied on his ability to decipher and lead, but in this moment, he was unsure of how to navigate not just the maze, but the emotional labyrinth they had become trapped in. Leora, who had always been a source of calm and healing, struggled to hold on to her composure. The tension between Serena and Adrian was palpable, and despite her desire to mediate, she felt helpless as the cracks in their unity deepened. The illusions surrounding them seemed to amplify the tension, their fears and insecurities feeding off each other. It was as though the very maze was conspiring to tear them apart, testing not only their physical limits but their emotional endurance as well. In this moment, the strength of their alliance felt fragile, and it seemed as if the trials were no longer just external forces to be overcome, but the very internal battles that threatened to fracture them. The path out of the maze was grueling, each step forward feeling heavier than the last. They moved with a mixture of exhaustion and relief, the once imposing illusions now fading as the physical reality of the clearing before them came into view. But as they stepped into the open space, the weight of their emotional and psychological strain became undeniable. The maze had been more than just a physical challenge, It had exposed the vulnerabilities within their bond. The once fluid teamwork now felt fractured, the air thick with unspoken words and lingering tension. Their silence spoke volumes as they surveyed the clearing, each person lost in their own thoughts, trying to process the internal battles that had been waged during their ordeal. The group's unity, once their greatest strength, now felt fragile, tested by the very fears and doubts the maze had conjured. Adrian, Serena, Kale, and Leora all stood at the edge of the clearing, their eyes avoiding each other as the magnitude of their experiences began to sink in. The trials they had faced together had not only tested their physical limits, but had revealed the cracks in their relationships. Serena felt the sting of her words to Adrian, knowing she had allowed her fear to cloud her judgment. Adrian, still reeling from the accusations and his own self-doubt, struggled with the weight of the emotional toll the argument had taken. Kale, ever the observer, recognized the tension, his quiet demeanor reflecting the burden of leadership he felt in that moment. And Leora, who had always sought harmony, now found herself wondering if their bond could be repaired, or if the damage had already been done. The realization that the trials they had faced were not just external obstacles, but reflections of their inner struggles, left them standing in the clearing with more questions than answers. The journey ahead would be marked not just by the challenges of the island, but by the deeper work required to rebuild the trust and unity that had once bound them together. As they stepped into the grove, the tension in the air seemed to dissipate, replaced by a profound stillness. The clearing, bathed in soft light, was unlike anything they had encountered on the island. Ancient trees, their trunks twisted and gnarled, stood in a circle around a small, serene shrine at the center. Vines of luminous flowers cascaded down, their petals glowing faintly, casting an ethereal glow over the scene. At the heart of the shrine lay an artifact of incredible power, a gemstone encased in delicate silver filigree. Its radiance was mesmerizing, a vibrant pulse that seemed to call out to them. But despite its beauty, there was an undeniable weight to the object. The power it held was not just the key to overcoming the final challenge of the island, but a reflection of their own inner struggles. The artifact, they realized, was bound to their ability to heal the rifts that had formed among them. As they gathered around the shrine, the weight of their recent conflicts hung heavily in the air. The artifact's power, once a symbol of hope, now seemed tied to their emotional and psychological growth. They understood that to claim the artifact's power and move forward, they would first need to confront and resolve the tensions that had surfaced during the maze. The grove, with its calm and soothing energy, felt like the perfect place for them to reflect and begin healing, but it also carried the challenge of forcing them to face their deepest vulnerabilities. Each member of the group stood silently for a moment, the weight of the task ahead pressing down on them. The artifact was within reach, but the key to unlocking its power lay not in their physical prowess or knowledge, but in their ability to rebuild their trust and unity. Only by overcoming their internal conflicts could they hope to unlock the potential that lay before them. Adrian's voice, steady yet tinged with the weight of the moment, broke the uneasy silence that had settled over the group. He gathered Kale, Serena, and Leora together in a circle, their faces drawn with the fatigue of the trials they had endured. His words, simple yet profound, cut through the tension in the air. "We've faced physical dangers before," he said, his gaze shifting to each of them in turn. "But this challenge has tested us in ways we didn't expect. The maze, the illusions, it's not just about surviving the environment. It's about surviving ourselves." He paused, his eyes locking with Serena's, a silent understanding passing between them. The emotional toll of the maze had been a mirror, reflecting their innermost fears and doubts, and Adrian knew that they could not move forward without addressing the cracks that had formed in their unity. Serena, Kale, and Leora listened intently, the words stirring a recognition within them. Serena, her brow furrowed in thought, was the first to speak, her voice soft yet firm. "Adrian's right. We've been tested in ways we didn't expect, but we've also learned something about each other. We've seen each other at our weakest, and now we have a choice. We can either let these challenges tear us apart, or we can use them to rebuild what's broken." Kale nodded in agreement, his usual stoicism replaced with a rare vulnerability. "I've always relied on my intellect," he admitted, "but this is something different. I see now that our strength comes not just from knowledge, but from how we support each other through the unseen battles. Leora's eyes were thoughtful as she spoke last, her voice carrying the wisdom of her connection to nature. Every wound we've inflicted on each other is one that can heal, but it requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to change. Together, they agreed that the only way forward was to face their fears openly and support each other in the process of healing. Serena's words hung in the air, quiet but full of conviction. She glanced at each of them, her silver hair shimmering softly in the light of the grove. There was a strength in her that had always been tied to her deep connection to the reef, but in this moment, her strength was rooted in the bonds she had formed with the group. We've let our fears and doubts come between us, she continued, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed the weight of the emotions they had all been holding back. The illusion of the maze had tested them, revealing the rawest parts of themselves, parts that were buried under layers of pride, guilt, and unspoken pain. Serena knew that if they were to move forward, they needed to break through the wall of mistrust and miscommunication that had grown between them. She took a slow, deliberate breath, gathering her thoughts as she looked at Adrian, Kale, and Leora. We need to remember why we're here, Serena said, her gaze softening. We set out on this journey because we believed in something greater than ourselves, something that connects all of us. Our mission, our shared goal, is still worth fighting for. Her words were a gentle but firm reminder of the unity that had brought them together. She paused for a moment before adding, but that means supporting each other, not just through the external challenges, but through the ones inside of us. We can't carry these burdens alone anymore. The sincerity of her voice reached deep into the hearts of those around her, bringing a sense of clarity and determination to the group. It was a moment of reckoning, where their individual fears and insecurities could no longer rule them. Together, they would find a way forward. Kale, his brow furrowed with thought, spoke first, his voice laced with vulnerability. I have spent so much of my life buried in books, lost in theories and history, that I never really learned how to trust others, not in the way this journey requires, he admitted, his words carrying the weight of years of solitude. The maze, the illusions, they shook me in ways I didn't expect. But I understand now that if I want to continue on this path, I have to learn to rely on all of you, not just in the practical sense, but in the emotional one too. His confession was met with a quiet understanding, a shared recognition that their journey had changed them all in ways they hadn't anticipated. Kale's openness served as a bridge, connecting him to the others in a way his scholarly mind had never allowed before. It was a moment of true humility, and the group began to feel the tentative threads of trust weaving back together. Leora, her usually serene expression tinged with uncertainty, spoke next. I've always relied on my intuition and connection to the natural world to guide me, she said, her voice gentle but steady. But facing the maze forced me to confront parts of myself I've kept hidden, even from myself. I've been running from my own doubts and fears about not being enough, about not truly belonging. She looked at each of them, her eyes filled with both regret and hope. But I realize now that none of us is alone in this. We all have our struggles, and that's what makes us stronger together. The words hung in the air for a moment before they landed, resonating deeply within the group. Their shared vulnerability, their willingness to confront their own weaknesses, created a space for healing and growth. Slowly but surely, they began to rebuild the foundation of trust that had been cracked but never fully broken. The challenges they had faced, though painful, had forged a new bond between them, a bond that would carry them forward into whatever lay ahead. With their relationships mended and the weight of their internal struggles lightened, the group approached the ancient shrine with a newfound sense of unity. Serena, her connection to the magical energy of the island stronger than ever, reached out to touch the artifact. As her fingers brushed the surface, a wave of energy pulsed through the air, and the artifact began to glow with an ethereal light. It was as if the island itself recognized their growth, responding to the harmony they had restored among themselves. The air hummed with power, and the once stagnant atmosphere around the shrine shifted, revealing hidden markings along the stone walls that had previously been invisible. Their journey had led them to this moment, and it felt as though the island, too, acknowledged their perseverance and resilience. As the shrine's glow faded, the ground beneath them shifted, revealing a concealed passageway that led deep into the earth. The entrance was narrow, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell the story of the island's history, an untold narrative waiting to be uncovered. Inside the hidden chamber, they discovered scrolls, ancient texts, and symbols that contained crucial information about their next adventure. The knowledge they uncovered was invaluable: directions to a long-forgotten temple, hints about a powerful artifact that could tip the balance of magic in their world, and the prophecies that had long been buried in the sands of time. The successful activation of the artifact had not only unlocked a physical path but had also provided them with the tools they needed to continue their quest. They had passed the challenge, but more importantly, they had emerged stronger, more connected, and ready to face whatever mysteries lay ahead. As they sailed away from the Isle of Echoes, the fog that had once enveloped the island slowly began to lift, revealing a sky that had not been visible since their arrival. The sunlight broke through the lingering mist, casting a warm, golden light over the sea. The crew, though weary from their trials, felt an overwhelming sense of relief and accomplishment. The challenges they had faced on the island, both external and internal, had tested them in ways they hadn't anticipated. Yet, in the aftermath, they realized that those very trials had forged a stronger, more cohesive team. Their journey had not only been one of discovery but also of profound personal growth. With the weight of their struggles now behind them, they embraced the calm that surrounded them, knowing that they had emerged from the island's trials more united than ever. The clarity of the sky mirrored the clarity of their minds and hearts. Adrian, Serena, Kale, and Leora stood together on the deck, silently reflecting on the path they had taken. The trials had not only solidified their skills and strengthened their individual resolve but had also deepened their understanding of one another. They had learned to trust each other in ways that went beyond mere camaraderie, finding strength in vulnerability and the shared commitment to their quest. While they knew the road ahead would be filled with more challenges, they were no longer uncertain of their ability to overcome them. With their bond fortified and their purpose renewed, they faced the future with an unwavering confidence, ready to tackle the mysteries of the world and whatever lay beyond the horizon. Chapter 55: Navigating Change. In the wake of their recent trials and triumphs, Adrian, Serena, Kale, and Leora found themselves standing on the cusp of a new reality. The Isle of Echoes had forced them to confront their deepest fears and insecurities, each trial stripping away the layers they had built to protect themselves. The physical challenges had been daunting, but it was the emotional and psychological tests that had left the most lasting impact. They had learned not only to trust each other's abilities but also to rely on the strength of their bonds. The fog that had once shrouded the island had lifted, but so too had the fog that clouded their hearts and minds. Each of them, in their own way, had grown and changed, gaining a deeper understanding of themselves and of those they had come to depend on. As they left the island behind and returned to their daily lives, the world they once knew seemed both familiar and foreign. Their relationships, once tested and fractured, were now stronger, built on a foundation of vulnerability, honesty, and shared experiences. Yet, this newfound unity came with its own challenges. They had to learn how to navigate the changes that had occurred, not just within themselves but within their dynamic as a team. The trials on the Isle of Echoes had reshaped their perspectives, and as they stepped into the future, they knew that the journey ahead would require them to adapt continually. With the echoes of their experiences still fresh, they faced the challenge of balancing their past growth with the demands of the world that awaited them, knowing that the path forward would be one of constant evolution. The Elysium sailed through calm waters, the sun casting a warm glow over the deck as the crew and their allies took a well-earned respite. The rhythmic motion of the ship and the gentle breeze provided a moment of peace, a stark contrast to the chaos and emotional turmoil they had faced on the Isle of Echoes. The once oppressive weight of the fog had lifted, replaced by an open expanse of blue sky, yet the stillness of the sea only seemed to highlight the unspoken tension that lingered among the group. While the outward calm suggested a return to normalcy, beneath the surface, each member of the crew was adjusting to a new reality, one that had been reshaped by the trials they had endured together. Though the air was light and the water serene, each person grappled with their personal changes and the newfound dynamics within the group, Adrian, usually resolute and confident, found himself reflecting on his role in the team, questioning how his decisions had shaped their journey and their relationships. Serena, ever the pillar of strength, struggled with the quiet moments between adventures, her thoughts often drifting to the magical connection she had with the reef and what her future now held. Kale, typically absorbed in his studies, was beginning to recognize the weight of the emotional growth he had experienced, finding a delicate balance between his scholarly pursuits and the deeper bonds he had formed. Leora, who had always been attuned to the natural world, felt a quiet uncertainty about her place in the group, her healer's instincts sometimes clashing with her own desires for personal growth. Though they were united in purpose, each of them faced their own quiet struggles, knowing that the calm waters were but a brief interlude before the next challenge would inevitably arise. Adrian found himself in a state of quiet introspection, his thoughts constantly returning to his role as a leader. The trials they had endured had forced him to confront the insecurities he had long buried, doubts about his ability to guide his crew and keep them safe, especially in moments when the stakes had been at their highest. He had always prided himself on his decisiveness and strength, but the events on the Isle of Echoes had shown him the fragility of his leadership. The challenges had shifted something deep within him, awakening a new understanding of the balance between strength and vulnerability. Though his sense of purpose was clearer than ever, the lessons he had learned were not easily applied. He was determined to lead with more empathy and a deeper awareness of the emotional and psychological burdens carried by those around him. Yet, the weight of his newfound responsibility felt heavier than before. Every decision, every action, now seemed to carry an invisible pressure to be perfect, to prove that he had grown from his past mistakes. Adrian often found himself torn between the desire to be a confident, unwavering leader and the need to be more thoughtful and inclusive in his approach. The journey had not only reshaped his relationship with his crew but had also changed the way he viewed leadership itself. As he looked out over the calm waters, Adrian couldn't help but wonder how he would navigate this new chapter of responsibility, knowing that his choices would have a lasting impact on both his crew and their future. Serena had always found strength in her connection to the sea, but the emotional strain of the illusions on the Isle of Echoes had shaken her more than she cared to admit. The visions of the reef and chaos, coupled with the deeper fears they had unearthed, left her with lingering doubts about her abilities and her place in the world. She had always seen herself as the protector of the reef, a steadfast guardian of its fragile balance, but the ordeal had made her question whether she was truly capable of carrying such a responsibility. Despite this, she was determined to rebuild her confidence and to integrate the lessons she had learned from her internal struggles into her role. Every quiet moment she spent by the sea, watching the waves crash against the shore, brought a sense of peace and grounding that helped her to reconnect with the essence of who she was. However, Serena was also acutely aware that she could not remain static. Her journey of self-discovery had revealed the need for change, both within herself and in the way she approached her mission. The tranquil rhythm of the sea, once a refuge, now felt like a reminder of the challenges that awaited her. The emotional toll of her doubts was something she had to confront head-on if she was to continue fulfilling her role with integrity and strength. She couldn't ignore the fact that her relationship with the others had evolved, and that their journey together required adaptability and a willingness to embrace the unknown. With each passing day, she worked to merge the lessons from the Isle of Echoes with her ongoing connection to the natural world, finding ways to channel her renewed sense of confidence into her responsibilities as the reef's protector, knowing that the future would demand even more of her than she had imagined. Kale had always prided himself on his intellectual pursuits, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and the thrill of discovery. His passion for history and ancient lore had been his guiding force, shaping his every step. However, the trials of the Isle of Echoes had forced him to confront the shadow of past failures and the limitations of his own intellectual pursuits. The maze had revealed the cost of his single-mindedness, his tendency to prioritize knowledge over the emotional and practical aspects of their journey. Now, as the group sailed forward, Kale found himself caught in a struggle between his intellectual ambitions and the demands of the present. While he longed to immerse himself in research, to uncover forgotten secrets, and delve deeper into the mysteries of the world, he could no longer ignore the weight of responsibility that came with being part of the team. This internal conflict left Kale feeling torn. His desire to continue his scholarly endeavors was as strong as ever, but he could no longer approach their quests with the same detachment. The bond he had formed with Adrian, Serena, and Leora had taught him that knowledge alone wasn't enough. It had to be applied, shared, and used in service of a greater purpose. Kale had learned that their adventures were not merely about discovery, but about collaboration and growth. Yet, balancing this newfound understanding with his personal desire for intellectual exploration was no easy feat. He couldn't simply retreat into the comfort of books and ancient texts. His role within the group required more. As he looked ahead, Kale knew that his path forward would require him to integrate his academic pursuits with the realities of the world they were navigating, finding a way to contribute both his mind and his heart to their collective journey. Leora had always been grounded in the natural world, her connection to the earth, and its creatures guiding her actions and decisions. As a healer, she had relied on her ability to commune with nature and its energies to restore balance and bring peace to those around her. However, the illusions on the Isle of Echoes had shaken her sense of identity, forcing her to confront the limits of her power and the fragility of her connection to the world she cherished. The trials had highlighted her vulnerabilities, and now, as the group moved forward, Leora found herself struggling with the changes in her role. No longer was she simply a healer, she was now an adventurer, caught in a whirlwind of action and conflict. This new identity clashed with the peaceful, nurturing existence she had once known, and she felt the tension between her desire to remain rooted in nature and her need to evolve in response to the demands of their journey. In the wake of these revelations, Leora sought ways to merge her deep bond with nature with her growing role as a protector and adventurer. She began to experiment with her abilities, seeking new methods to strengthen her powers and adapt them to the unpredictable challenges they faced. She knew that the world was changing, and so must she. The natural world was no longer a sanctuary she could retreat to in times of distress. It was a tool she needed to wield more purposefully in their quest. As Leora worked to refine her skills, she also explored the deeper aspects of her connection to the earth, trying to understand how her powers could grow and evolve to meet the ever-shifting demands of their adventure. Yet, even as she embraced the changes within herself, she couldn't help but feel a longing for the quiet solace she had once found in the heart of the natural world. The balance she sought was not easily attained, but Leora was determined to find a way to honor both her roots and her new path as a healer and adventurer. As the Elysium docked at the bustling port city, the vibrant atmosphere greeted them with a sharp contrast to the tranquil isolation they had left behind on the Isle of Echoes. The port was alive with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares, the chatter of travelers sharing stories, and the constant clamor of activity from dock workers unloading cargo. The air was thick with the scent of salt water and spices, and the city's labyrinthine streets buzzed with the energy of new opportunities and uncharted paths. As they disembarked, the group felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The world outside was vast and full of promise, but it also demanded that they shift gears, moving from the quiet reflection of their recent trials to the dynamic pace of city life. The sight of the city's towering spires and bustling marketplaces was both exhilarating and overwhelming, and each member of the group instinctively began to withdraw into their thoughts, preparing for the journey ahead in their own way. Adrian, ever the leader, felt the weight of their next steps pressing down on him. The city's chaotic energy stirred his thoughts, reminding him of the responsibilities he had assumed since the Isle of Echoes. While others were caught up in the frenzy, he sought quiet moments to refocus, aware that their next adventure required not only physical preparedness but also a renewed sense of direction. Serena, in contrast, was drawn to the city's natural energy, seeking out spaces where she could reconnect with her surroundings. Her time in the quiet of the sea had heightened her sensitivity to the energy of the land, and she felt the pulse of life in the city's crowded streets, a reflection of the forces that connected all things. Kale, ever the scholar, was immediately absorbed in the intellectual offerings of the city, eager to explore libraries and speak with fellow researchers. The labyrinth of knowledge seemed endless, and the possibilities for discovery excited him. Leora, still recovering from the weight of her previous trials, felt a sense of disorientation. She had always found solace in the natural world, but the busy port city felt foreign to her, and she struggled to find her place amidst the hustle. Despite the noise around her, she felt a deep need to ground herself, seeking ways to harmonize her sense of self with the demands of this bustling new environment. Each member of the group, though united in their purpose, faced the challenge of adapting to this new phase of their journey in their own unique ways. Adrian, reflecting on the lessons learned from their recent trials, took a step back to reassess his leadership style. The pressure of guiding his team through the challenges of the Isle of Echoes had made him more aware of the delicate balance between his responsibilities and his personal growth. He sought input from Kale and Serena, both of whom had unique perspectives on his leadership. Kale, with his methodical approach, suggested ways Adrian could better structure their plans and trust in their team's expertise. Serena, on the other hand, offered her insights on how to lead with empathy, encouraging him to be more open about his vulnerabilities and to lean on the strengths of those around him. Adrian knew that being a leader was not just about making decisions but also about adapting to the needs of his team. As he worked through these reflections, he began to find new ways to integrate his leadership with his own evolving sense of self, determined to lead with both strength and humility. Meanwhile, Serena dedicated herself to reconnecting with the reef, the source of her power and her heart's true calling. The emotional weight of the illusions on the Isle of Echoes had left lingering doubts about her place in the world, but she now focused on integrating her role as protector of the reef with her growing sense of self. She spent hours at the water's edge, feeling the currents and the pulse of the sea, finding new ways to enhance her connection to the natural world. Kale, deeply engrossed in the new knowledge they had gathered, threw himself into his studies, seeking answers and expanding his understanding of the ancient artifacts they had uncovered. He recognized the importance of balancing his scholarly pursuits with the practical demands of their adventures and began to look for ways to merge the two, believing that a deeper understanding of the past could help them navigate the dangers of the future. Leora, still shaken by her experience in the maze, worked tirelessly to strengthen her healing abilities, experimenting with new techniques to expand her capacity to heal both body and spirit. She felt a deep need to harmonize her connection to nature with her role as an adventurer, learning how to channel the energy of the land in more focused and effective ways. Each member of the group, in their own way, was focused on personal growth, finding ways to adapt and evolve in the face of their ever-changing journey. Despite their individual efforts to adapt and grow, the group found an undeniable strength in their shared experiences. The trials of the Isle of Echoes had challenged them, but it was also through those struggles that they had forged an unbreakable bond. As they worked toward personal growth, they constantly leaned on each other, providing support in moments of doubt and encouragement in times of uncertainty. Their relationships, once shaped by necessity, had deepened into something more meaningful. Each person, aware of the vulnerabilities the others had revealed, felt a renewed sense of trust and loyalty that transcended any of their individual challenges. The journey ahead was still unknown, but their connection had become a cornerstone in navigating the complexities of their new reality. The difficulties they had faced, both internally and as a group, had only strengthened their resolve. They had learned to embrace each other's strengths and to support one another through their weaknesses. Whether it was Kale offering his scholarly knowledge, Leora healing both wounds and spirits, Serena's unwavering connection to the sea, or Adrian's evolving leadership, each person now stood as both an individual and an integral part of the team. Their bond, tested but unbroken, had become the foundation upon which they could confidently face whatever came next, knowing that together they were stronger than any obstacle. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the soft hum of the sea surrounded them, the group gathered around a crackling campfire to discuss their plans for the future. The air was thick with the weight of their shared history, and for the first time in a long while, they allowed themselves a moment of reflection. They spoke of their journey, how far they had come, and the challenges they had faced together. From the treacherous paths of the Isle of Echoes to the shifting dynamics of their relationships, each test had forged them into a more cohesive unit. They had learned to navigate not only the physical dangers of their adventures but the emotional complexities of their growing bond. In this quiet moment, it became clear that their strength lay not just in their individual talents, but in their ability to adapt, grow, and support each other through every trial. The conversation naturally turned to the future, and though uncertainties lay ahead, there was a sense of peace among them. Their shared experiences had deepened their trust and their understanding of one another. They no longer saw their differences as obstacles, but as vital components of their unity. The challenges they had overcome had revealed the strength of their connections, and the changes they had undergone individually were mirrored in their collective progress. As they sat together, their laughter mixing with the crackling of the fire, it was clear that the journey ahead was not just about the destinations they sought, but about the unspoken promise to face whatever came next, not as individuals, but as a unified team. Adrian's voice broke the quiet, steady and filled with conviction. His gaze swept over the group, each member of their team silently reflecting on the weight of his words. "We've come through a lot together," he continued, his tone unwavering. "The trials we've faced, the fears we've conquered, they've shaped us into who we are now. And though these new changes may feel daunting, they're just another part of our journey." His words hung in the air, a reminder that the path ahead would not be any easier, but that they had proven time and again that they could endure. Adrian had always been the steady leader, but in this moment, his determination felt almost tangible, grounding them all in a shared purpose. Looking around at Serena, Kale, and Leora, Adrian could see the resolve in their eyes, and it filled him with a renewed sense of strength. He knew that navigating the complexities of their evolving roles and relationships wouldn't be simple, but it was part of the larger journey they had chosen. "We've overcome each challenge by working together," he said, his voice softening but still firm. "We'll face whatever comes next the same way. We'll adapt, we'll grow, and we'll continue this journey as a team." His words resonated deeply, reminding them all that, despite the uncertainties of the future, they were no longer just individuals trying to find their way. They were a united force, bound by their shared past and the trust they had built along the way. Serena nodded slowly, her gaze distant as she reflected on the journey they had undertaken together. The weight of her words was clear in her thoughtful expression, and the quiet strength she exuded resonated with the group. "We've learned so much," she began, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had grown within her over time. "Not just about the world around us, but about ourselves and each other." The memories of the trials they had faced, from the physical dangers to the emotional battles within the maze, had left their mark, but Serena had come to see them not as burdens, but as lessons. The challenges had deepened their understanding of who they were, both as individuals and as a team. It was clear to her that their shared experiences had brought them closer, shaping a bond that went beyond mere companionship. Her eyes met those of her companions, and a small, knowing smile tugged at her lips. "These changes," she continued, her voice steady with resolve, "are a chance for us to grow. We've all been forced to confront our own fears, doubts, and ambitions. But now, we can use that knowledge to strengthen our bond and find new ways to work together." Serena's words carried the weight of someone who had learned to embrace change rather than resist it, someone who understood that growth came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them head-on. Her statement was a reminder to the group that they were not defined by their struggles, but by how they chose to overcome them, and with each step forward, they would continue to build on the trust and strength they had cultivated. Kale spoke with a quiet conviction, his eyes scanning the group, taking in their expressions as he reflected on the journey they had all undertaken. "The knowledge we've gained and the bonds we've forged will guide us as we adapt to this new reality," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his scholarly insight and personal growth. The trials they had faced had not only expanded their understanding of the world but had also reshaped their perspectives on what it meant to truly know themselves. For Kale, the island's mysteries had become more than just academic puzzles. They had prompted a deeper introspection about the balance between knowledge and action, between intellect and emotion. As he spoke, it was clear that his time with the group had taught him the value of collaboration and how much they had each influenced one another. "We're not just exploring new territories," Kale continued, his tone more reflective now. "We're also exploring new aspects of ourselves." His words hung in the air, a reminder that the external journey mirrored the internal one they were all navigating. Each challenge had pushed them to confront parts of themselves they hadn't fully understood before, from Serena's evolving sense of self as protector of the reef to Adrian's growth as a leader. Cale himself had wrestled with the tension between his scholarly pursuits and his role within the team, learning that sometimes the greatest discoveries came not from books, but from the relationships and experiences that shaped them. His statement was a quiet acknowledgement that, while the path ahead would present new obstacles, they were no longer the same individuals who had set out on this journey. They had become something more. Leora's smile was gentle, but it radiated warmth and certainty, a contrast to the depth of reflection that had marked the group's earlier conversations. Her gaze lingered on each of her companions, taking in their weary but resolute expressions. "We've faced so many trials, and each one has made us stronger," she said, her voice soft yet unwavering, a calm anchor amidst the uncertainty they still faced. The weight of their shared experiences was visible in the way they had all grown, individually and as a group. Leora had learned to navigate not only her connection to nature but also the complexities of her role as an adventurer, finding ways to balance the spiritual and physical demands of their journey. Her confidence was born from the deep bond she shared with the group, and the understanding that each challenge, though daunting, had brought them closer to their true selves. Her words, filled with quiet reassurance, seemed to lift the spirits of those around her. "I'm confident that we'll continue to grow and thrive, no matter what changes come our way," Leora continued, her tone steady with belief. She had seen firsthand how the group had transformed through their struggles, each person evolving and adapting in ways that would have seemed impossible when they first set out. The strength they had forged through their trials was not just physical, it was a strength born from vulnerability, from sharing their fears and doubts and confronting them together. Leora's expression was one of calm certainty, a reminder that their unity, their ability to rely on each other, would be the key to navigating whatever new challenges awaited them. The future was uncertain, but with the bond they had created, she knew they would face it as one. With their resolve renewed and their spirits lifted, the group stood at the threshold of a new chapter, their minds and hearts brimming with purpose. The weight of past challenges had been heavy, but it had forged a resilience within them that could not be easily shaken. Change, though ever present, was no longer something to fear, but something they were prepared to meet head-on. The lessons they had learned, both from the world around them and from each other, had solidified their bond, turning it into an unbreakable foundation on which they could build their future. Each of them had evolved, their understanding of themselves and their relationships with one another deepening, and they now carried that newfound strength into whatever awaited them. Navigating the complexities of their shifting world would undoubtedly be a challenge, but they faced it with confidence and hope. Their unity, forged in the crucible of trials and triumphs, would serve as their compass, guiding them through the uncertainties of the future. As they looked ahead, the landscape of their lives stretched out before them, full of opportunities and unknowns. Yet, no matter what lay beyond the horizon, they knew they would face it together, stronger and more capable than ever. The possibilities were endless, and with each step, they would continue to grow, not just as adventurers, but as a team bound by trust, understanding, and unwavering loyalty. The journey ahead would be theirs to shape, and they were ready for it. Chapter 56: A New Adventure. As the sun rose over the horizon, its golden rays bathed the Elysium, casting a warm glow over the ship as it prepared for departure. The bustling port city had offered a brief respite from the trials they had faced, a place to rest and regroup. However, the pull of the unknown was strong, and Adrian and Serena felt the familiar thrill of anticipation building within them. Though they had found solace in the city's comforts, the allure of the open sea and the promise of new horizons called to them. The world ahead was vast, filled with uncharted territories that promised new discoveries, untold stories, and thrilling adventures. With their hearts set on what lay beyond, Adrian and Serena stood together on the deck, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The journey was far from over, and the excitement of the unknown filled the air, energizing them for the next chapter. With a shared glance, they both knew that this was only the beginning of yet another great adventure. Adrian stood at the helm, his hands steady on the wheel as the salty breeze tousled his hair. carrying the scent of the open sea. Before him, a weathered map lay unfurled on the deck, its ancient edges curling slightly under the wind. The map, a recent find from their previous exploration, marked regions far beyond the familiar coastlines they had known. As he studied the chart, a spark of excitement flickered in his eyes. "This map points to a region that's never been explored," he said, his voice filled with the thrill of discovery. The possibility of venturing into the unknown was a temptation Adrian couldn't resist. "It's a chance for us to chart new territories," he continued, his gaze fixed on the uncharted land that beckoned, "and uncover secrets that have been hidden for centuries." The thought of discovering something no one else had dared to explore filled him with anticipation, and the crew, sensing his enthusiasm, shared in his excitement. Together, they were about to embark on a journey that would not only reveal unknown lands but also uncover the mysteries of a world waiting to be explored. Serena approached Adrian, her footsteps light on the deck as she joined him at the helm. The early morning sun glinted off the sea, casting a warm glow over her features. Her gaze, steady and focused, mirrored the same sense of anticipation that radiated from Adrian. "We've faced so much together already," she said, her voice soft yet filled with conviction. "This new adventure feels like the perfect way to start fresh and test our abilities in new ways." There was an undeniable excitement in her tone, a readiness for whatever lay ahead. Serena had always been driven by the challenge of the unknown, and the prospect of discovering uncharted lands alongside her companions was something that stirred her deeply. For her, this journey represented more than just new territories to explore. It was an opportunity for growth and a chance to face new obstacles alongside the people who had become her closest allies. Together, they were on the verge of something greater, and Serena felt the weight of their shared experiences grounding her as they prepared for the next chapter. With the crew assembled and the ship fully stocked with supplies, the Elysium set sail, its sails billowing as it moved away from the bustling port city. The clamor of the city faded into the distance, replaced by the peaceful sounds of the open sea. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of salt water and the promise of adventure. The horizon stretched endlessly before them, an expanse of blue that seemed both inviting and mysterious. The waves rocked the ship gently as they ventured into open waters, leaving behind the familiar shores for the unknown that awaited them. As the Elysium sailed farther from land, the crew fell into a comfortable rhythm. The daily routines of ship life took over, with each member of the crew performing their duties with practiced ease. The sound of the sails snapping in the wind, the creak of the wooden ship as it moved through the water, and the occasional commands from Adrian kept the atmosphere focused yet calm. Serena stood watch at the bow, her gaze scanning the horizon, while Cale pored over their maps, examining potential routes. Leora tended to the crew, offering healing and support when needed. There was a quiet unity among them, a sense of purpose that bound them together as they sailed deeper into the heart of the unknown. The first days at sea passed in a gentle calm, the waters smooth and untroubled, offering Adrian and Serena the perfect opportunity to prepare for the challenges they knew would come. With the ship gliding effortlessly through the waves, they spent their time reviewing old journals and maps, studying the details of the mysterious region that lay ahead. Each document they pored over seemed to hold fragments of a larger puzzle, sparking their curiosity even further. The anticipation of uncovering the secrets of this uncharted land grew with every passing day, and the shared excitement between them added a layer of intimacy to their connection. As they delved deeper into their preparations, their bond grew stronger. The quiet moments spent together, discussing theories and exchanging ideas, allowed them to reconnect on a deeper level. Serena's analytical mind and Adrian's strategic thinking complemented each other, creating a synergy that made them an even more effective team. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a mutual respect for the journey they had undertaken and the challenges that awaited them. Each new discovery, no matter how small, only served to heighten their shared sense of purpose, and the road ahead felt filled with infinite possibilities. As the days turned into weeks, the once calm sea began to show signs of restlessness. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, blotting out the sun and casting a foreboding shadow over the ship. The once tranquil waters became choppy, each wave more unpredictable than the last. The air was thick with tension, and the crew could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Adrian and Serena exchanged a glance, the weight of the change settling between them. They both knew that the uncharted waters they were venturing into were not only unknown in their geography but in the unpredictable dangers they might hold. Bracing themselves for the worsening conditions, Adrian and Serena steeled their nerves, knowing that their expertise would be put to the test. The looming storm was more than just a physical challenge. It was a reminder of the risks that came with exploring uncharted territory. With the sea growing increasingly turbulent, every decision, every shift in the wind required their full attention and swift action. The crew worked in unison, their movements sharp and deliberate, as they relied on each other's strengths to navigate the worsening conditions. Despite the rising tension, Adrian and Serena's shared resolve kept them grounded, their focus unwavering as they steered the Elysium into the heart of the storm. One evening, as the sky darkened and the storm loomed closer, Serena stood on the deck, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The sea, once calm, was now a restless expanse of waves crashing violently against the hull of the ship. The wind howled through the rigging, tugging at her hair and the edges of her cloak. Despite the chaos unfolding around her, Serena felt a strange stillness within, as if something beyond the storm was drawing her attention. Her instincts were on high alert, sensing an energy in the air that was both unfamiliar and powerful. It was as though the very elements had been altered, hinting at a force that was more than just a brewing tempest. The sensation was subtle at first, a tingling on her skin, a whisper of energy that vibrated through the air, but it quickly grew stronger, like an electric charge building before a storm. Serena's connection to the sea and its magic had always been strong, but this felt different, almost as if the sea itself were reacting to something hidden beneath the surface. She narrowed her eyes, scanning the vast expanse of water, wondering what lay ahead. The storm was not the only challenge they would face that night, she realized. There was something more, something extraordinary waiting in the shadows of the storm, and she could feel it drawing closer with each passing moment. "Adrian!" she called out over the roar of the storm, her voice rising above the howling wind and crashing waves. The fury of the sea surrounded them, but Serena's senses were sharper than ever, the bond to the ocean thrumming through her with an intensity she couldn't ignore. There was something beneath the surface, something not quite right, stirring in the depths. Her heart quickened, a mixture of urgency and unease washing over her as the water seemed to pulse with an unfamiliar energy. She stood at the edge of the ship, her silver hair whipping around her face as she strained to see through the rain-slicked air. "There's something strange in the water," she shouted again, her voice now tinged with a sense of foreboding. The currents were restless, and Serena could feel it deep in her bones. Something was coming, and it was unlike anything she had ever sensed before. The storm was no accident, and whatever lurked beneath the surface was as much a part of it as the tempest itself. Adrian, who had been coordinating with the crew to ensure the ship's safety, glanced up just in time to catch the urgency in Serena's eyes. The storm was growing fiercer, the waves crashing higher, and the wind howling like a living thing. His instincts told him to stay focused on the ship's course, but something in Serena's expression made him pause, her usually calm demeanor now replaced with a rare intensity. He knew that whatever she had sensed was important. "Hold steady!" Adrian shouted to the crew, his voice firm and commanding over the chaos. "We need to navigate through this storm carefully." His gaze flickered back to Serena, the weight of the moment pressing on him. He trusted her instincts implicitly, and if she said something was wrong, he couldn't ignore it. His orders were clear, but inside, his mind raced, wondering what lay ahead in the storm, and whether they could make it through unscathed. As the storm raged around them, the Elysium battled the fury of the elements, its crew working tirelessly to keep the ship on course. The waves slammed against the hull with violent force, sending sprays of salt water into the air, while the wind howled like a beast in pain. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the chaos in brief, jagged flashes. The ship creaked and groaned under the pressure, its timbers straining with each gust, but the crew remained resolute, their hands moving with practiced precision to maintain the ship's fragile stability. Through it all, Adrian's steady leadership and Serena's keen instincts anchored the crew's efforts. Adrian barked commands, his voice unwavering despite the storm's growing rage. While Serena stood at the bow, her senses tuned to the water, guiding them with quiet certainty. She felt the pulse of the ocean beneath them, the rhythm of the storm, and through the tumult, she knew the Elysium could survive. With each wave that surged and each bolt of lightning that cracked across the sky, their bond with the ship and each other only grew stronger, driving them onward through the tempest. Finally, as the storm subsided and the last echoes of thunder faded into the distance, the crew emerged from their shelters, exhausted but visibly relieved. They looked around, still adjusting to the silence that followed the chaos, their faces drawn but grateful. The storm, though brutal, had revealed something unexpected, a new path. A narrow channel had appeared in the wake of the tempest, leading toward a hidden cove that none of them had seen before. It was as though the storm had opened a door to something unknown, and now they had no choice but to follow where it led. The waters here were calmer, the violent turbulence of the storm replaced by a serene stillness. A thick mist had settled over the cove, but it wasn't like any fog they had encountered before. The mist glowed with a faint, otherworldly light, casting an ethereal sheen across the water's surface. It was as if the cove itself was alive, holding some secret just beyond reach. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but Serena, standing at the edge of the ship, felt an inexplicable pull toward the mist, sensing that this place was no accident. Something awaited them here, and they had no choice but to venture deeper. Adrian and Serena, despite the exhaustion weighing on their bodies, felt a surge of excitement that cut through their fatigue. The air was thick with anticipation as they stood together, gazing at the hidden cove that seemed to pulse with mystery. The storm that had nearly destroyed them now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the promise of something greater. For a brief moment, the world seemed to stand still, and in that stillness, Adrian's voice broke through, steady and full of conviction. "This must be the entrance to the uncharted territory," Adrian said, his eyes gleaming with determination. The storm had tested them, but they had survived, each of them, stronger for it. The path ahead was uncharted, but that only fueled the fire within him. He stepped closer to Serena, his gaze fixed on the glowing mist ahead. "We've navigated through the storm, and now we're on the brink of something incredible." His words were a promise, a vow that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, driven by the thrill of discovery and the bond they shared. The crew worked in harmony, maneuvering the Elysium into the cove with careful precision. As the anchor dropped, a sense of awe swept over them, for the full extent of the hidden land was now visible. The cliffs rose majestically from the water, their slopes covered in lush greenery, the rich foliage alive with vibrant colors. In the distance, ancient ruins peeked through the dense trees, their weathered stone structures standing as silent witnesses to a forgotten time. The air was thick with the scent of earth and vegetation, a world untouched by civilization. The sounds of the cove filled the silence, a symphony of exotic birds calling to one another from the treetops, their calls unfamiliar but hauntingly beautiful. The rustling of unknown creatures moving through the underbrush added to the feeling that they had stepped into a realm that had long been hidden from the outside world. It was as though time itself had paused in this forgotten place, and the crew stood at the threshold of discovery, unsure of what they would find but certain that it would change everything. The next morning, Adrian and Serena led an expedition ashore, eager to explore the mysterious landscape that lay before them. The terrain was rugged and untamed, with jagged rocks and thick undergrowth making their path difficult to navigate. Despite the challenges, their shared sense of adventure fueled their determination to press on. Every step forward revealed more of the island's secrets, and they moved with a blend of caution and excitement, driven by the promise of discovery. As they ventured deeper into the land, they encountered strange flora and fauna, many of which seemed to possess magical properties. Vivid flowers with glowing petals shimmered in the sunlight, while trees with twisting roots whispered in the breeze, as if alive. Creatures with iridescent scales and eyes that gleamed with intelligence watched them from the shadows. Each new discovery heightened their sense of wonder, filling them with awe and anticipation. The island was more than just a hidden cove. It was a world unto itself, and every corner held the potential for something extraordinary. As they ventured deeper into the land, the dense foliage began to thin, revealing a series of ancient structures half hidden by the passage of time. Weathered stone walls, covered in moss and vines, rose before them, their surfaces etched with intricate carvings and symbols that hinted at a long-lost civilization. The air felt thick with history, as though the very ground beneath their feet held the echoes of a forgotten people. Adrian's gaze swept across the ruins, sensing the significance of what they had uncovered, but it was Serena who stepped forward, drawn to the carvings with an intensity that spoke of deeper knowledge. With her understanding of ancient magic, Serena began to decipher the symbols, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into the stone. As she worked, the carvings seemed to come to life, telling stories of a powerful and forgotten culture that had once thrived in these lands. The symbols spoke of kings and sorcerers, of a civilization that had wielded magic in ways the modern world could scarcely imagine. Serena's heart quickened as she realized the importance of what they had found. This was not just a relic of the past. It was a key to unlocking the mysteries of the island and the magic that still lingered in its very air. The exploration of the ruins soon revealed new challenges and mysteries, each one more complex than the last. Hidden traps lay in wait, cleverly disguised among the ancient stones, and cryptic messages appeared on walls and carvings, offering riddles that tested their wits. The air around them seemed to hum with secrets, and every corner turned brought a new puzzle to solve. Despite the danger, the thrill of discovery pushed them forward, their determination unwavering. Adrian and Serena, relying on their combined skills and knowledge, worked in perfect unison to solve the puzzles and unlock the secrets of the ruins. Serena's deep understanding of ancient magic paired with Adrian's sharp mind and strategic thinking made them an unstoppable team. With each challenge they overcame, their partnership grew even stronger, their trust in one another solidified by the trials they faced together. Their shared enthusiasm for discovery, and the excitement of unraveling the island's mysteries, only deepened the bond between them, forging a connection that went beyond mere partnership. As the days passed, their adventure in the uncharted territory became a testament to both their resilience and curiosity. They ventured deeper into the land, facing the unknown with courage and determination, never shying away from the challenges that arose. Each new discovery, whether a hidden artifact or an ancient structure, added to their growing understanding of the rich history and magic that pulsed through the land. The island, once a mysterious and uncharted place, was slowly revealing its secrets, and they were there to uncover them. Though they had made great strides, their journey had only just begun. The more they explored, the more they realized how much there was still to learn, and the promise of further adventure stretched before them like an open horizon. The mysteries of the land, its history, and its magic beckoned them forward, offering a future full of exploration and discovery. Adrian and Serena stood on the precipice of something extraordinary, their hearts filled with excitement and anticipation for the adventures yet to come. With each new discovery, Adrian and Serena felt a renewed sense of purpose that fueled their journey forward. The challenges they encountered, whether physical or intellectual, only strengthened their resolve, while the wonders they uncovered reminded them of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Every artifact and ancient structure revealed more about the land's mysterious past, and with each piece of the puzzle, they felt closer to unlocking its true significance. As they continued their exploration, the thrill of the unknown pulsed through them, pushing them further into the heart of the uncharted territory. The promise of more adventures on the horizon was an intoxicating force, and they embraced it with eager anticipation. Together, they were ready to face whatever new challenges awaited them, knowing that their bond would carry them through. The journey was far from over, and with each step, they were more certain that the path ahead would be as extraordinary as everything they had already discovered.